welcome everybody back to Giving Gap TV. We are so excited to launch the Giving Gap Audacious campaign, where we're talking to bold and creative and unconventional women that are shaking things up in their communities through their leadership and nonprofit service. And today we are so excited to be joined by Neda Kellogg, who is the Executive Director of Project DIVA International. So welcome, Neda. We're so glad to have you. This is fantastic. Yay. So I want to first just start with you sharing a bit about your journey and sort of what inspired you to develop Project DIVA and your mission.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having us, Project DIVA International, on your show. We are super amped about this. So Project DIVA International stems from a space where, as a young person, actually a seventh grader, my mother had her nervous breakdown. And it was at a time when we didn't talk about mental health a lot. And I know we hear that all the time. I actually went through it, right? And so she sent us to live with my father, who raised me and my brother, my father's always been an active dad. But when they split, of course, my mom took us. And so she sent us to live back with my dad. And he raised me from middle school and high school. That seventh grade year, though, I went to 3 different seventh grade schools. And so just understanding the impact that divorce can have on a family, as well as mental health challenges, especially when your mom is not there. As I fast forwarded into adulthood, I ended up figuring out things that nobody told me, right? Like I figured out that I didn't work well for people. So I did well better on my own, like figuring out business, but I didn't have the business acumen to actually sustain those businesses. And so Project DIVA came about when I started working inside. Actually, I owned a salon. And I was hearing the moms talk about their daughters, and I felt like they were repeating the things that I had actually went through. And so I started working with a middle school in Omaha, Nebraska, where I'm from, and put together a program that really spoke to those girls, so that when they finished spending time with me and my guest speakers, that really reaffirmed that they weren't going nuts, that their feelings were valid. Then the girls could come over to my salon and actually get services as an award or a reward. And I then moved to Minnesota and began working for a charter school. In charter schools, we didn't have those in Omaha, so it was all new to me. And in working at the charter school, we lost our principal in the first few months. We lost our business manager in the first few months. So the school was in a disarray. And I just asked if I could wrap my arms around the girls, because I had did it back in Omaha, and they allowed me to. And those girls grew so much in like a span of like 4 months that the girls asked me to bring it back. And it bumped heads with all the school stuff because they had finally normalized. And so I moved out into the community and 501c3'd it. And here we are 17 years later, evolving.
Yes. What a beautiful story. And I love the way that connects to the childhood, the very beginning, like your origin story. So we know this is obviously something you're incredibly passionate about. So tell us maybe about a few defining moments in this 17-year journey so far, things that you're super proud of.
Ooh, the things that I'm super proud of is that all of our girls, whether they've been with us for a day, a month, a year, or they've stayed with us for several years, they know that they have a place to come back and plug into. Suicide rate for Black girls is up 182%, and it's been that since 2001, and you don't hear a lot about it. Yeah. And so to know that these girls that we have served in some sort of capacity, whether it was through our annual cohort of 35 to 45 families a year, or in our workshops in the schools, or in speaking engagements, one-offs, they know that we're here like genuinely for them. When we coach, we're very vulnerable. We're speaking from spaces in regards to we were once them girls, but not only were we, but we still are as Black women figuring this thing out. And girls they most definitely attract to that message. Like, we're not saying that we have it all together, but to know that we're in it with them, it has been a very, very successful space for us.
Fantastic. So, and you're right, because we're all still just figuring everything out day by day as things continue to ebb and flow in our current society. So you're a Black woman in the nonprofit space. You've built this thing from the ground up. Tell us about some of maybe the challenges and barriers you've had to overcome.
Cool. I would say my biggest challenges have been I've had to be bold since I was young, right? Like being bold and taking risks have been something that I learned early. Um, because starting off in like my parents, my teachers, and the other caregivers that I had, my grandparents, my uncles and my aunts, I come from a huge family on both sides. They always told me that I could do anything I set my mind to, but what they never told me was that I had to think strategically and how to go about it because there were two Americas, right? Like I've had to figure out not only how to reach my vision, but I've also had to figure out the type of mindset I have to not feel suicidal. Because there definitely has been days in my young days as well as my in adulthood that I felt suicidal. How to then create the community that I need to build with, but to also not feel so isolated and to be vulnerable with my own truths. Another thing is how to respond to challenging people and situations and not react as a Black woman. How to parent parent my sons while figuring all this stuff out, because of course, the white picket fence and the husband and like all those things were staples growing up. And to find out that it's different than that, now I'm parenting, right, with co-parents. And then finally, how to fund my lifestyle and my professional dreams when I was never taught finances. So these are the things that not only have I had to do across time, but I'm still in it. Hence, our approach to how we coach the girls is that, again, we're in this together. Whatever, as we're finding information out, we're alley-ooping it to them.
Right, 100%. And I love this piece where you talked about not responding a particular way, because we all know about the code switching, all the hoops that Black women really navigate on a daily, right, hour by hour basis sometimes, right, just to survive, just to make sure we stay in our position and don't flip every table over, right? So, with that, we have to think through strategic problem solving. So tell me maybe some unconventional ways that you've learned to problem solve when faced with these particular challenges.
Ooh, we've had to stay innovative and unconventional in how we move and create as Black women, like I said, since I was a kid. And so we've had, like, when you, as I have founded this organization and lead it, there's always the question of, am I the right executive director to lead, right? Because I'm also a founder, because those messages are sent to us. And so I've had to fight against those things and really be innovative and impactful when it comes to like funders wanting measurements that aren't conducive to the way we get results from our girls, because Black girls have to be handled differently, clearly, because numbers don't lie. You know what I'm saying? Like 182% suicide rate means that these girls, not only are they over it, but they don't even want to be here. And so we first have to level set their emotional and mental health before we can even get to the finances, knowing that that is as equally as important to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. So the way we've had to approach our girls is not just from a space of, they come in and we're mentoring, we're literally coaching power hours. You got to get with yourself before you get your day started. Because like you said, all day, every day, we're having to combat we put the girls on offense instead of defense, right? As young girls walking into adulthood, as well as it's, what are your habits, right? Because we know that when they get the habits of, doing their power hour, making sure that they understand what their goals are and able to check it off, but are also able to be vulnerable when it's a little tight or when it's, when they're struggling, have the community to be vulnerable with, to talk about the stuff that they're not able to talk to when they're with their families, right? So that they can get to the goals. And then, of course, like I said, the finances, teaching them the emergency fund, the short-term fund, and the long-term fund in middle school and high school, so that they can get the habits. And so legit, like, having to do all of those things and be innovative and impactful while still myself figuring out funding, how to read financials, What are the foundations looking for versus what is the individual donor looking for? How come I can't get into these social circles that have the money to actually fundraise, right? Like we just need one or two of y'all and we're good, you know, to really get behind us. And so it's being innovative and impactful from a lens of I'm not interested in code switching who I am because I have girls looking up at myself as well as our leaders. And so we've had to literally create a space for us to be ourselves and then coach from that space and also entice or not I don't want to say influence, but invite funders into this work.
100%. And you just hit on so many things that I know so many folks watching this will relate to. And this whole thing, especially around impact and measurement, right? How do you measure success? And typically when you're looking at raising funds and grant making, a lot of times the metrics, like you said, they're really hard to sort of pull out because the numbers don't really work that way, especially with the work that you're doing. So tell me, Neda, about the impact that you know that you're making. So anything that you want to list in terms of impact that you're making on the community with these girls.
Yes. So we have served over 5,000 girls in the time that we have been together or like been coaching the way we have. And so it's the 5,000 girls that we've touched, we have a less than 1% teen pregnancy rate. And that's because of the way we coach is around respecting your body, right? It's around making sure that you understand how your body even works. Black women have the highest health disparities. So it's getting them to understand how they're on the preventative side, right? That's how we can end up with a less than 1% teen pregnancy rate. Our high school graduation rate is 99%. We also have 86% of our girls who come through our cohort year after year articulate that they have a high level of financial literacy when they finish with us because we've taught them simply the basics, emergency fund, the short-term goals, and the long-term goals. 82% of them learn how to effectively communicate their emotional and social needs so that they can be well, right? Because of the power hour, they feel like we give them the language because a lot of times they don't have the language to what they're feeling when they're in schools that are not for them. 80% of our girls establish healthy daily routines of self-love, self-care, and emotional security. And again, we know as Black women how important that is because in order to stay on the offense, you have to really have your armor on before you pick up the phone sometimes in the morning, let alone step outside your house, you know? And so ours, like, that's where we are with that.
That's so powerful. First of all, that data right there blows my socks off, and I'm not even wearing socks. I mean, people need to literally start writing the checks, right? And this is what we need. We need funders to hear these stories, to understand the work that's being done. And again, we try to reiterate to not make these nonprofit leaders jump through all these hoops. They're already doing the work, right? So we have to honor the work and we have to fund this work because it's so incredibly important. So I just want to pivot a little bit. As you think ahead, because you have been doing this for nearly 2 decades, Neda, what's some advice that you would pass on to the next generation of Black women leaders?
What I would pass on is immediately we have to decide to do our work. Like we literally have to stop our lives, decide what is the vision, right? What is your lifestyle vision? Because we're all waking up to live a certain lifestyle. So what is your lifestyle vision? Because that encompasses all of you, your work, your play, where you live, right? So decide on what that is and then figure out how do you get to your power hour? How do you make sure that you're able to show up yourself no matter what? And I'm not talking about cliche. I'm talking about really sitting with yourself to say, these are my challenges. Now, what do I need to do to slowly begin to turn the tide on my own personal, emotional, and mental and financial health? Because again, as these young ladies are growing up and into this, they're also having girls look at them, right? So if we're already at 182% suicide rate for Black girls, at what point does the tide shift? It has to be with them seeing more of us healthy, legit, like get off of social media and do your work. So then when you come back on social media, the work that people are seeing is exuding from you for like the truth of who you are, the truth of your real essence. And that then allows for us to do more work together. You will be surprised at how many Black women do not get behind us. And it's like, are y'all serious? And it's I don't hold it against anybody. It's because we got to do our work, right? Once we begin to really be okay with ourselves, then we can be okay with each other and the next, right? And actually open our eyes to see that as a community, these are our girls.
100%. They are our girls. The whole community, the whole village, right, needs to come together.
Village.
But you just said something so interesting, because I think I would be surprised at the people that wouldn't back you. And you just opened up a whole other can of worms. We don't even have time in this conversation to delve into competition within our own circle and all of that. But what you said is, if you don't get in alignment with yourself and find your own value, then right, everything else trickles down from that.
Exactly.
So yeah, powerful. Let's do a little reflection, Neda. Let's go back to young Neda in Omaha.
Okay.
Got the simple life, the good life, as they say.
Yeah.
What would you tell a younger version of yourself?
I would tell me that I am infinite and that I got my whole life to figure this out. Like, I really do have an opportunity to create what I envision, as long as I know, like, I pretty much live from the end, and the end will always change as you grow and expand in your knowledge, but that I got this, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have until God calls me home to figure it out. And we've seen it in examples like the ones that we always hear about and the ones that we don't. So like your Madam C.J. Walkers, your Diana Rosses, your, like, when you listen to their stories from little girls, they knew. They just needed the support to do it. And even when they didn't, they was able to figure it out and get the support. And so I would just tell myself that I got this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's powerful, because sometimes we want to go back and undo and rearrange, but a lot of times it's just the confidence, right? If I could tell myself, like, hey, you got it, just keep going, that would, I think, have taken a lot of the stress and anxiety, right, out of the journey. The journey is going to be what it is, right?
It's going to be what it is.
It's going to be what it is. But if you have that knowing, like, okay, I'm good, I'm doing what I need to be doing, using my gifts and talents. So that's very powerful. You mentioned Madam C.J. Walker, Diana Ross. Who are some of the women that you would say you looked up to just along your journey that you would credit as to having some sort of influence into the woman you are today?
Absolutely. I got to go back to Omaha. You know what I'm saying?
That's
I
right.
love my city. Even though I'm in Minnesota, I rep Omaha. You know, Warren Buffett, Malcolm X, Neda Kellogg, we all, Terrence Crawford, you know what I'm saying? Listen, Tina Terrell from Lincoln, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know, Nebraska is it's such a loving space. And I feel like coming from the Midwest gave me such an advantage. But my mom, even though she's had mental challenges, the years when I was young, she set me up for life. The love that she poured into me, that's the foundation of who I am. And then my cousin Debbie Jackson, when I was homeless from 18 to 21, she took me under her wing at around 19, 20-ish, and took me off the streets and couch hopping to actually say, listen, I'm gonna show you how to make this work, right? Again, like, the stuff is gonna come for us, but if you just know you're gonna get to the end, people will come in your life when you're like, oh my gosh, if she only knew, right? And Debbie Jackson, my big cousin, was that woman for me at 19, 20, and she ushered me into my 21st birthday and my first apartment. Mrs. Beverly Franklin, she was the one who was like, okay, you have this sisterhood. Have you ever researched Black women clubs? And I'm like, I never knew those existed, right? So to be able to take what she knew as an elder and then put what I have with what they've done, like, that has been a North Star for us. Miss Susan Russell Freeman, she has like held my hand as an elder and just affirmed, like, you got this. When it's not clicking and it's not being clear, she's that one that's like, okay, come on, let's go have some tea. You know, like, like, I got you on this. So yeah, and I just have to throw in there, those are the women, but my father is a rock. Like, my dad is one of my, like, they talk about Black men not being in the homes, but as Black women, we know there are a lot more Black men that are than are not. And so him and my cousin Dale Tucker, like, when I say they are the ones that have undoubtedly reminded me of how beautiful I am and how, how smart and intelligent I am. And when I need a hug, like that male energy, hands down, they got me.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned that because we need the balance, right? We need both. And our Black men are so important in our communities, especially when it comes to supporting us in all the different ways we need the support. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I want you to tell us what DIVA International has coming up. Please tell us about any campaigns, events, anything you want folks to maybe engage with, could volunteer, donate. Tell us all the things.
Absolutely. So to continue this work, in the short term, PDI, we are looking to meet our annual budget of $1 million this year.
Okay.
And that will support our reserve fund because, again, as Black women, like we weren't taught that we need a reserve. So now I know for sure we need a reserve, like a larger reserve.
Yes.
And then we need to add 4 full-time staff, contract with 20 coaches, and maintain our 5 to 7 paid internships that are girls that are in the organization, but also are taking leadership roles. And additionally, my legacy is a self-mastery campus for teens. We have enough rec centers, and I'm not down on them because our kids need that for their health, their physical health, but they also need a mental and emotional space that they can come and talk politics. They can come and get their ID and understand what IDs they need. If their moms messed their credit up before high school, they can come and get that situated. They can have financial sessions and things like that. So we're creating a self-mastery teen campus, which is dedicated to amplifying not just Black girls, but also just young people around their personal and professional visions of success. So we need champions that are going to come and help us with this $30 to $35 million project.
Wonderful. Tell us the website and your social handle so folks can also follow you everywhere.
Absolutely. So projectdiva.org is our website. We're on LinkedIn under Project DIVA International. We're on Instagram under Project DIVA International and Facebook under Project DIVA International.
Yeah, Project DIVA International. Y'all hear she needs $1 million. Somebody cut the check immediately. And finally, one last question just related to the campaign. What does audacious mean to you?
Audacious means being bold when it comes to making it known that our Black girls are killing themselves at an alarming rate and have been since 2001. Audacious means being firm with telling the successful stories of Black girls and young women as we use our coaching model to support the resources and amplify when they execute on those things. And lastly, being audacious means asking for what we need as an organization to ensure that our leaders are paid well and our girls have real pathways to their successes.
Amen and amen. Neda, thank you again for being on the platform with us today. This was a gem of a conversation. We hope that everyone follows, donates, engages with Project DIVA International. Please support this fabulous Black woman and all that she's doing in her community. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having us.